I sound like a fucking idiot. You can cut that part for the intro. You're going to have to learn to beep, but who knows what that means. I'm not a doctor. I have an associate's degree in music, so not a doctor. All right, and welcome to this Tuesday edition of DB2. We're switching up the format. We are talking injuries and waiver wire pickups on Tuesdays. Wednesdays, we're going into every game of the following week. And then honestly, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're not sure what we're going to do. We're going to play around with some ideas, see what you guys like, see what we like, and see what happens. So keep your eyes out for those because they're probably going to get weird. David Brem here with Daniel Butler as always. Butler, how's the day treating you?
It's going well. Whenever you do these introductions, I am always wondering if you're going to forget your name or forget my name, or I'm not sure.
Okay.
But
in my defense, how many times have I said your first name in knowing you for 20 years?
Yeah, that's true. But I just always find it interesting. I'm like a listener as well. You know, I'm intrigued to see how he's going to fumble it at the beginning as well. I'm all ears, right? Listen in. But with that said, I want to thank everybody truly for coming over here. If you subscribed, if you came over from the Chewbacca Lemon channel, so thankful. That was crazy. I was not expecting all the love, so thank you. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's awesome. Hit the subscribe button, the like button, all that stuff. It really does help us out. Leave a comment down below if there's anything you want to see us talk about, maybe some daily fantasy, or that's just something I'm rolling around in the brain, or just some random stuff. Because if not, we're just going to do random stuff. That's what's going to end up happening. Tuesdays will always be injuries, waiver wire, pickups. Wednesdays will always be looking at all the games. But then the rest of the week, who knows? It might get crazy. So just let us know in the comments if there's anything you want to see, or you might just get the craziest takes you've ever seen on YouTube. And we might look like geniuses, or we might look
More
like
than
complete
likely
morons. But you got to stick around and find out just which one it is. I don't know. We don't know. We'll see. With that said, we're talking injuries, waivers. They kind of go hand in hand because of injuries. You might be picking up some people on waivers. It kind of makes sense.
This week for sure.
Yeah, so there were some big injuries that happened. So we're going to talk about that in today's episode. And also, if you're watching this in the future, these might be some names that still are quite relevant. So, beginning off, we're going to go through all the injuries, the significant ones for fantasy. Some of them more significant than others. But starting things off, looking at the Saints, Deontay Harris, I just want to mention, he left with a hamstring. Looks like he should be ready when he comes back. But Michael Thomas might be ready as well. So, plus you shouldn't own him anyway. Deontay Harris, I don't even think in a deep league should be owned. He had one target. It happened to be a touchdown, which is great. But, I mean, he's a super boomer bust. But yeah, he was still wide receiver 27 on his best week of the season. So, shouldn't be owned. And then Taysom Hill should be back on week 7, which isn't fantasy relevant really, but just heads up there. Now, moving on to Washington, I think this is way more interesting, the Washington football team, because there's a lot to... Curtis Samuel wasn't being played. Unfortunately, I mean, it saddens me because he comes back from injury and it looks like a soft tissue. Just, I mean, he might not play again this season, or this just could keep coming back. It really is unfortunate. But because of that, the Washington football team here has a problem with pass catchers. They don't really have any besides McLaurin. It's not very deep there. So, is there anybody besides McLaurin? And I didn't even ask you about New Orleans. So, if you want to add anything with New Orleans there,
I got nothing.
I apologize about that. But do you have anybody on the Washington football team that is interesting, pass catchers that now that we see that Samuel is out again, that maybe could, play a role?
Yeah, I want to keep my eye on Humphreys. I'm not picking him up. I'm definitely not starting him, but I'm keeping my eye on him. He only had 3 catches, but for 73 yards, so he did a good amount with him. Had 5 targets. Carter actually had more targets, did a little bit less with him. I think it's possible one of those two guys kind of shows themselves as number 2 wide receiver, and we'll kind of see if that matters. But at this point, they are just names to keep your eye on. They're not guys I would recommend picking up. Just names, because I think one of them will show themselves as the number 2 wide receiver on this team.
Yeah, it's really tough here. Heineke threw it 41 times. It was not a great game for him. Didn't have any touchdowns, a couple picks. couple sacks there. Yeah, it was not a great game. He did throw for
No.
250 yards, which is okay for fantasy value, but without any touchdowns. McLaurin didn't have a great day. He was
No.
actually
And
wide receiver 3.
he's more than likely the only Washington wide receiver you're going to start the rest of the year. Is going to be McLaurin more than likely.
And he's a stud. Don't worry about him. Better days ahead.
No.
But yeah, I did want to mention though. Yeah, DeAndre Carter, 8 targets. We'll see. He played even more snaps than Humphreys. He was on the field for 58 snaps, which was 70% of the snaps there. But Ricky Seals-Jones, Logan Thomas is out. He played 99% of the snaps. So he was
That is
on
a
the
high
field.
number.
That is a high number. Played every snap, but I believe one. I think that would be how that works out. So, because yeah, that would be the way it works. So played all but one snap, and he has a revenge game next week against the Kansas City Chiefs, I believe. I believe he is a great streaming option. I actually think he's going to have a really, really nice game. If you're looking for a tight end, maybe got your tight end on bye week. Maybe I think what the Falcons aren't, maybe Kyle Pitts, and you're like, who's somebody that's better than Kyle Pitts? Ricky Seals. Okay, he's not better than Kyle Pitts, but he will be in this upcoming week. I'm saying it now. Ricky Seals-Jones will have more points than Kyle Pitts in week 6. Is that what
Yes. I am sorry to say this, Seals-Jones, and you're not watching, so it doesn't matter. But now I hope somehow you get negative points just because he said that. Just because he guaranteed it. I just want to see you come out with like negative 0.5 points.
But with all seriousness, I do think they do.
No, I like him. And definitely this week, and I think it's a possible. Thomas was playing very well in this offense before he went out. Like there's room for a tight end to be valuable on this offense.
Yeah, and there's a reason why it was Logan Thomas and not Seals-Jones at the beginning. Like he's obviously the more talented, the better tight end fit, but still there could be some nice value there, especially if he's going to be on the field every snap. You would think he's going to get a handful of targets for sure.
And he'll fall in the end zone a few weeks. I mean, let's be honest, that's what you're hoping for with him.
With tight end, with every tight end, pretty much.
With almost every tight end, you're hoping they fall in the end zone. So, next one's pretty simple analysis. Joe Burrow got hit pretty well, had a throat contusion, which is one of the worst sounding injuries I've ever heard. Turned out to not be a big deal, but sounds terrible. But he went to the hospital after the game. He's fine. No real concern there for anything. But there is some stuff to talk about in the Bengals game. It's not about him. It's slightly about an injury. Joe Mixon was banged up coming into the game. They weren't sure he was going to play. Definitely didn't play what you expect Joe Mixon to do. He was in the game, but not in a substantial way. And Samaje Perine took that chance and did a decent amount with it.
Yeah,
with the touches he got.
Yeah, so he was on the field 61% of the time. Now, I personally didn't play him. I was shocked. Sometimes you look at rankings and you look at him and be like, man, am I crazy? Like, I feel like he should be way higher than that. And I'm like, or way lower. And Joe Mixon was unanimously a top 20 back, like after, saying he was going to play on ESPN. And like, man, I'm not playing him. And I mean, there was guys below him that I had to play, and I'm like, there's no way I can. Like, I feel like he could put up. He might get 2 carries. Now he did get 10 carries. He did get a touchdown. It's not like he had a bad game at all. I mean, it was a fine game. But yeah, he only saw the field 28% of the time, 19 snaps. I mean, he got the ball a lot when he was on the field. So you got about as much as you could for how little he was on the field. I just if we'll see with this injury. But Perine, I thought he looked pretty solid, and he's involved in the pass game. One of those guys that I think should be owned. He probably is owned, and he's owned in like 30% of the league. He might be owned in your league, but if he's not, I think he should be one of the high. I know we disagree on this. I think he should be one of the higher priority guys you pick up this week. Maybe not the number one because we'll talk about him later, but he should definitely be one of the higher ones. If it's like where if you use your waiver claim, you go to the back. I probably would hold off unless you desperately need something, or depending on the size of the league. But if it's a league where it's just based on standings, and I think he should be at least probably picked up for a majority of teams.
Yeah.
That's
I don't have an issue picking him up. Especially if Mixon, I think you almost have to. Because we don't know if this is going to linger or what this is going to do for Mixon. Because it is, I mean, here's the one thing we do know: if Mixon is not 100%, Pirine has some serious value in this offense. So we've talked about handcuffs more than I ever thought we would, but this season has really proven to be a season where some of those top guys you do want the handcuffs again. So in that situation, yes, I'm good with starting him. I think in any game he has no value outside of Mixon not being at full strength to me.
Yeah, no value I think is a little harsh because now, especially I think with this game, we might start seeing a little bit more of him. We'll see. I mean, it's kind of a speculation. If
Yeah,
we'll see if his role expands at all. Mixon depend. It really does. It's all dependent on Mixon's health, probably. Which is obviously, if you're a Pirine owner, like what are you supposed to do? You're just kind of waiting around, seeing what happens. But I do think he's probably worth a stash on the bench if nothing else. A good chance you're not starting him if Mixon plays, but if Mixon doesn't play, immediately he goes
oh
into
yeah,
your lineup probably as a nice
100%.
flex play. So really dependent on that. This offense, I really like the offense. We've been high on the offense, so there's a lot of another offense with a lot of mouths to feed with Chase, who's been sensational. Higgins coming back, which I really like him as well. Boyd is a nice number 3. I mean, you got a lot of talent there, but I do think obviously if Mixon's got out of there, I mean, he shows that he can have a nice workload and do some good work with it.
Yeah, 100% agree with you on that one. Uh, Next up, Juju Smith-Schuster, shoulder injury, probably a few weeks to maybe the season where they're not 100. Like a lot of this stuff, we don't have firm dates on yet. We've talked about him a lot. We weren't sure how great his value was prior, so hopefully he's not a guy you were relying on. I mean, it's tough because of like going out a week, but like he hasn't he hasn't been that great this season, anyways. But it is kind of an upgrade for Johnson and Claypool. Like that's one less person you kind of have to worry about. There's not another wide receiver that at least I'm worried about coming in and taking too many catches. So if you're a Johnson or Claypool owner, they probably bumped themselves up a couple spots, but hopefully you weren't starting Juju anyways.
Yeah, that's just really. I don't think Ray McLeod. No offense, Ray McLeod the third had 52% of the snaps. He would, I'm assuming, be their third wide receiver based on what we saw when Juju went down. I don't personally think he's going to take too much value away. He only had 2 targets in this game, 1 catch for 1 yard. So it's going to be Deontay Johnson, who only had 2 targets, which is kind of weird, and Chase Claypool, who had a nice game on his 6 targets. But it's going to be those guys. I think those are the guys. Tight end's not really relevant as well. Obviously, Harris is involved.
Harris could get a couple more catches.
He's got so many catches this year. I think last week or 2 weeks ago he had like 14 catches in a game. So Ben only completed 15 passes in this game. It was a solid game by him. He looked better. 250, 2 touchdowns. Definitely looked a lot better in this game. So if he's a competent quarterback, I really like Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson the rest of the season. I've been low on the 3 wide receiver thing, but now that it's just 2,
it's a new ball game.
I kind of like they were drafted as Johnson was 21, Claypool 26. Currently Johnson's wide receiver 11, but points per game basis, Claypool wide receiver 18 on a points per game basis. I think that's about where they are. I think they're well over their ADP and maybe even better than that. I mean, it's hard to say.
They could creep into. They could creep into top 10 and top 15 though pretty easily.
I think so. It depends on Ben obviously as well, but if Ben has games like this, I think they're both going to be really solid rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Next one, not super fantasy relevant. Lions wide receiver Quintez Cephas.
Wait, how dare you? How dare you? Not fantasy relevant. We didn't even talk about Jared Goff. Are you going to talk about Jared Goff?
No, I'm not.
Because you just said
nope.
Jared Goff.
You had Quintez on a lot of your team. Why are we talking about Jared Goff?
Because
I know why we are. I know why we are because you have to. I forgot that we're legally mandated.
Jared Goff, quarterback 30 for week 5, threw for a wonderful 203 yards, 21 of 35. If I do some little quick math, it doesn't say this on our screen.
And guess what?
That's 60% completion percentage. I did that in my head right there. He also had a QBR of 21.4. That's not good.
Yeah. And you know when we could
There's
have
no
talked
reason
about
to
this?
talk about this, by the way.
You know when we could have talked about this? Tomorrow's episode. This has nothing to do with this episode. Like, I thought you were not going to talk about tomorrow, I'd let you go. But no, you're going to talk about it tomorrow too. So we're done with this. You'll probably talk about it in the other episodes when it has nothing to do with the Lions too. But to be honest, you weren't starting Quintez Cephas. We've talked about the Lions a lot. We focused on their running game, which we'll talk about tomorrow in our full coverage episode. Not a guy you were hopefully starting. We don't really think any Lions wide receiver is relevant. So a name. So now you know he got hurt, but it probably doesn't affect your life.
Yeah, and St. Brown, though, he has had back-to-back top 30 weeks just inside the top 30. So in a deeper league, he probably should be owned at least. Actually, definitely should be owned. And maybe in the I mean, you do it back-to-back weeks, getting 8 targets. He might actually be especially
in a 14-team league with bye weeks coming in.
And Jared Goff throwing him the ball. I mean,
okay. All right. Next up is the Bears. This is another one where Justin Fields had a hyperextended leg injury, came back. Could be something that maybe comes back up, but it doesn't look like it's going to be an issue. Also, not a guy you're starting in fantasy, at least right now. So hopefully, I say that, but hopefully you're not. So I'm not too worried about long term, but right now, this is not his biggest issue. And we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow, but his biggest issue is not the injury, it's the offense. So, and the play calling.
Yeah. What's concerning about Justin Fields, and obviously we will talk about this more, but we're going to talk about the rushing, and that goes into who I want to talk about. He had 3 carries for 4 yards. So, like, that's not even relevant. And, like, that's the whole thing with Justin Fields. Again, we'll talk about that.
Tom Brady had more than that.
And yeah, I saw that rush. He ran for a first down. It was a nice run there. But anyways, Damian Williams and Khalil Herbert is kind of interesting. So now that Montgomery went down, it went down last week. We thought that Damian Williams was going to be the guy, and obviously, if you started Damian Williams, you're not upset about it. He had a solid game, but Herbert actually outcarried him and outsnapped him. He was on the field 3 more snaps. It was basically, I mean, it was almost identical, 50-50. This is somebody who I think probably should be owned. He's owned, and it shows 19% in Yahoo, 5% ESPN. I'm not sure, somewhere in that range. That is a really wide range, but wherever he is, he's not owned in a lot of leagues. I think he probably, if you're getting, if you tell me he's getting 18 carries, anybody getting 18 carries when the running back, especially bye weeks, I think they got to be owned. And hopefully you have a bench spot available. Actually, I hope you don't, because that means your bench is stacked. But if you have a bench spot available, deeper bench on a smaller league, or if it's a deep league, obviously should be 100% owned. Probably should have been owned already, but should be owned. 18 carries. Damian Williams is obviously should have been owned, so that's not anything to talk about. But with Montgomery down, obviously assuming Montgomery's not playing, Herbert, he wasn't even that's the thing, he wasn't even involved in the offense before people did pick him up. Obviously, we see his ownership percentage did go up quite a bit, but it still wasn't too high because he wasn't involved. Damian Williams was the guy, and now we see that it's not really. It's like 50-50.
Yeah, and hopefully we get some clarity on that. It'd be nice to see one of them take the reins. I don't know that we're gonna see that though. This could be a straight 50-50. Then we'll just kind of see how that goes. But yeah, I like in a deeper league and with bye weeks coming up, if they stay kind of this 50-50 issue, they're both playable in a deep league during bye weeks for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting 15 plus touches, there's not a lot of guys, running backs, that get 15 plus touches. So,
Max Williams, next one for the Cards. He is done for the season. Finally, one we have some like definitive numbers on. It's unfortunate for him, obviously, in the team. If you were riding with him in fantasy, you've had 2 very good weeks and okay and 2 very bad. He's been very boomer bust like a lot of tight ends, but a guy that was relevant in fantasy football. There's a good chance he was the guy you were rolling with. So, unfortunately, he's done for the season. I don't think it does much for anybody in the Arizona passing game. Like, I don't think it boosts anybody. I also don't think there's like a backup tight end that's coming in that you care about. So
yeah, I mean that's the thing here. Demetrius Harris, I think, is the next guy in line. at tight end. Not much to say there. Yeah, I don't think he has any value. He played 32 snaps, didn't have a target, or he wasn't involved in the passing game. So I'm not sure how many routes he ran, but yeah, he wasn't involved. At least Kyler didn't look his way in the 31 pass attempts he had. Yeah, I think maybe a slight uptick on some of the lower guy. Hopkins is going to get his. Obviously, you're hoping his is a lot more than what it's been so far, but
Yeah.
maybe a little uptick to Rondale Moore, the Christian Kirk, the guys on the lower there, but maybe the running backs get an extra catch or two. But yeah, there's not much change, at least yet. We'll wait and see, but he's been really solid. I think there's a good amount of people. I played him in week 5, so it's unfortunate. But I think there was a good amount of people after seeing what he did in 3 straight weeks. Week 3 wasn't, his best week, but 2 boom weeks, week 2 and week 4. I think it would sort of been like, this guy might be a borderline tight end 1, in a 12-team league. He might be on the outside, somewhere around there. And now, that's unfortunate. Obviously, our fantasy teams are not really too relevant. When a guy goes out for the season, obviously that's awful. Yeah, there probably was a good amount of people that were like, okay, buying into it after week 4.
For sure.
And then, unfortunately, that happened.
You want to take the big one?
All right, let's talk about the Giants. So the Giants are not a great football team. I'm going to say
Correct.
that. But more importantly for fantasy, and really just saddened by they have had so many injuries. Like, this is just like almost unfair. It's like the whole wide receiver core has been injured basically, and now Daniel Jones had a concussion, so Mike Glennon came in. So you know how bad that is if Mike Glennon's your quarterback.
Great place to be.
And he wasn't great. And Devontae Booker had to take over for Saquon, who went out. And it looks like this injury. We'll see how long it is, depending on.
They're calling it week to week, which is the least helpful.
It could be several weeks. I saw the ankle. I'm not sure. So.
I feel fairly strong he's not going to be back next week.
Yeah, but Saquon has been a miraculous healer in the past, so who knows? They'll be like going out there with, he's not probably going to be back it's going to be a couple of weeks most likely. But yeah, this should be your number 1 waiver claim here. Devontae Booker. It's not like he was fantastic in his 16 carries, but he had a touchdown, had a few catches, as well as a receiving touchdown, which made him running back 14. Obviously, anytime you have 2 touchdowns in a game, you're going to be pretty far up on the running backs. But yeah, this should be number 1, 100%. He's a starting running back in the NFL, and it's a team that runs the ball. So it's not like, and it's a competent offense, especially with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones has been really good. I know he wasn't great when he was in, but he wasn't in that. He only had 13 passes for 100 yards. It's not like he was awful. I wasn't having the best day, but he went out with a concussion. Who knows how that game would have went? I'm sure they still would have lost, but he might have had a really nice rest of that game. I like Daniel Jones. He's to me has been impressive for fantasy purposes. So I think they're going to put up points at least, and Daniel Jones can move the ball. So I think Devontae Booker will have plenty of chances to score.
Yeah, and we touched on it for a minute there. If you're rolling with Daniel Jones, which is very likely, that he'd be a guy that you could be rolling with. Make sure you've got a quarterback ready to go because he's concussion protocol. He could be ready to go next week, but you never know. Like, those things linger, and we might not know until day of. So, a lot of people aren't carrying 2 quarterbacks. This would be a situation where you might need to drop that last wide receiver on your bench and just have a quarterback ready in case Jones can't go.
Yeah, and I think if you do own Daniel Jones, there's a chance you do have 2 quarterbacks, or a quarterback on the waiver wire is probably pretty solid, depending on your solidly. Now, Kadarius Toney, we didn't mention, but 10 for 189. I'm not as high on a lot of people that are probably talking about him, because not that he's not super talented, but it's just everybody was injured.
Everybody was out.
Yeah, 13 targets. He probably should be owned in quite a lot of leagues, at least, because we don't know, when everybody's going to be coming back. But you look at you look at who's Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Kenny Galladay went out of this game. So John Ross has been seeing a lot of snaps. That's not great. Unfortunately, I don't know how because he played at Cincinnati. I'm sure you've seen some of John Ross, and he just never did anything. Obviously, very fast, but that I do know, very fast. But it just hasn't.
That was about it.
Hasn't developed beyond that.
Yeah. So yeah, he's a guy who he's going to be a very high waiver pickup, and I just don't think I'm willing to. I don't know. Maybe throw him in there as like if you're lower and you want to grab him for your bench just to see, or maybe this week wide receivers continue to be out and he has value this week, but I don't think he's a long-term play for sure.
Yeah, with all those,
I think
but
short-term.
again, he's definitely a solid speculative ad. There could definitely be people on your bench that are worse to own. Maybe
Well,
your
and if
second
he's what
quarterback or second tight end if you own a second tight end, or a wide receiver that is like meh. You're like, I can pick somebody up that's kind of similar on this guy. He does have a boom potential, especially with all the injuries. I mean, you see it here in this game. So if
two of those three are still out, like he's probably a decent play next week, and um, maybe a really cheap DFS ad if you are playing daily.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what that comes in at. But yeah, 10 for 189. Obviously, you can't sneeze at that, and I will not sneeze at 10 for 189. So not too shabby. But then last, we're going to talk about this daunting offense here, the Kansas City Chiefs, an absolute blowout. The Kansas City Chiefs. Tell me if you've heard this before. The Kansas City Chiefs are involved in a blowout.
Heard that one, yes.
But they were the team getting blown out.
Not the normal turn on that one.
So
yeah, it was, but the big name here is Edwards-Helaire went out. They're just saying a few weeks. Doesn't look like it's season ending, but I mean that few weeks could turn it. It could be 3, or it could linger, and I mean we could be looking at 6-7 weeks down, and he's still not playing.
Yeah, and we're not owners. I was low on him.
No.
He had a nice cut last couple of weeks. I'm like, okay, I might have been wrong. Like he's been really solid the last couple of weeks, and his ADP was around that ADP. So I'm like, I personally thought at running back 14 he was too high. But I do know that he destroyed my Texans last year. So I'm like, I'm not like he doesn't have talent. Well, or the Texans defense is just awful, which is probably part of it as well. But
most of it.
Yeah, Darrell Williams here is the guy. I think he's only owned in somewhere depending on your league 8 to 16%, depending on where you're playing. So yeah, I mean he was the guy. He got 43% of the snaps, which Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 26%. So taking out his, I think this is going to be like a 60-40 or maybe a 65-35 somewhere in there with him and Jerick McKinnon, which got a good amount of love here as well. He hasn't been involved at all, McKinnon, until this game, as opposed to Darrell Williams. So Darrell Williams is definitely the guy you got to pick up. But in a deeper league, if you can't get Darrell Williams, or he's already owned most likely in a very deep league, but if you can't get him, Jerick McKinnon could be kind of interesting as if he's on the field 35% of the time. He was on the field 31%. That's with Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting 26% of the snaps. If he's on the field 35%, maybe 40% of the time, and a pass-heavy offense, like, why can't he catch the ball 4 or 5 times a game?
Oh yeah, we've seen him.
That's relevant in a point per reception, especially.
Yep. Yeah, in a deep league for sure. I honestly think in a 10-team league, there's a chance you're not starting Williams. I think you might have a couple of better options because honestly, Edwards-Helaire has not been. I mean, his numbers skewed because of week 5. But he hasn't been a lights out.
Well, even if we just look at the week 3 and 4, that's around where his ADP, but he was still ranked around like running back 20-ish. I remember because I remember looking at it. So he was ranked around there. You would think,
and I think it's safe to say he has more talent than Williams.
You would think Williams will be a little bit lower, mid 20s. He's a starting running back, late 20s, somewhere in there. But like, there's a good chance that you have a wide receiver you would rather play there, or maybe a running back, depending on how you drafted or who you've picked up. So there are several. Devontae Booker, I'd rather play over him, or if you pick him up, you probably won't be able to get both of them. Question. But Booker is the number 1 ad, unless your league is just not active at all, which that would be wild if it's not active and you can get both of them. But if you can, go for it. But yeah, this is a few weeks at least seems. So Darrell Williams looks like a must add in pretty much every league, I think. If you can't get Booker should be your number 1 ad, and then Williams definitely up there as well as probably the number 2. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking he would be the number 2 ad.
Yeah, probably. A guy who's not really injury related, like Tyreek Hill did come out, but not to a point where it's going to affect any other games. But Mecole Hardman had 9 catches for 76. Has fairly consistently been the number 2 guy. some weeks the number one guy on Hill's bad weeks. He's an interesting. He's owned in 40%, so there's a good chance he's owned in your league. But a guy to maybe check and see, maybe he's not. Maybe your league is one of that 60%, and a guy that I would be more than happy to have on my bench just in case.
Okay, hear me out. So, McCole Hardman was wide receiver 17, which is above wide receiver 24, Tyreek Hill, right? He did better than Tyreek Hill. So, if you pick up McCole Hardman, could you trade him for Tyreek Hill?
How dumb is your league?
He finished above him.
I understand that. He's actually finished above him.
Wait, 3 out of 5.
Weeks.
So, if it's just a finish above or below league, and you just have to pick the two, and you picked McCole Hardman, and the other guy got Tyreek Hill, you actually would be leading after 5 weeks, which is also a very interesting league, and I want to know more about how that league works, because that sounds...
I'm fairly sure you just made it up. So.
That sounds fantastic. I think that sounds really intriguing. McCole Hardman has outscored Tyreek Hill 3 out of 5 weeks, which of course means McCole Hardman is higher on the current season than Tyreek Hill as a wide receiver. That's a lie. That's not how math numbers work, okay?
Especially when he was 1 and 2 the other weeks.
Tyreek Hill is currently wide receiver 3. McCole Hardman, wide receiver 53.
I now feel like we've talked about McCole Hardman too much. I just wanted to bring him up, and now I feel like it's become a thing, and now we've gone too far.
I just thought it was interesting. I thought it was a topic that no one else is as brave as I am to bring up McCole Hardman or Tyreek Hill. Okay, that's brave right there. No one else is willing to say out loud. What everybody's thinking. Should I trade my Tyreek Hill for McCole Hardman?
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody coming through. That's going to wrap up this episode. I'm cutting you off. That's what's happening here. So we appreciate you coming. If you made this far, thank you, first of all. Second of all, if you haven't liked, you made it this far. Let's be honest. You liked it at least a little bit, enough to hit a button. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe. We're putting out 5 episodes a week. We'll have our big one tomorrow, covering all the games coming up in week 6. So first week of bye week, so that'll be some interesting, some guys left out that are normally just shoe-ins for your playing, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, subscribe, comment, hit the like button, helps us out. We very much appreciate it.
Yeah, tell a friend as well. Anything that can help us out. Thank you so much.
You watch YouTube, you know the deal.
Thank you so much. Really, really thankful to all those who have come by and already subscribed or just watching. I do appreciate that. We appreciate that. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Make sure to come back Wednesdays, the full episode. We talk about all the games and then so much more content. It's worth to subscribe because it's free. You can't beat free. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. See ya.
See ya.